So yesterday we looked at how a plant transports material. Okay? What were the forces that made it able to transport water? Polar nature of water is one. That's what keeps the water together inside the xylem. But what pulls on the water? Oh, sorry, I thought you had your hand up. Osmosis, right. Okay, as water evaporates through the stomates, okay, salts that are in that water, and there's lots of minerals in that water because it's absorbed from the dirt. Okay, there's those salts and minerals get left behind. That creates an osmotic pulling action. Since the water is polar, okay, it's hydrogen bonded to itself and the inside of the xylem, and there's a pulling force that pulls it up the tube. Okay, so the polar nature of water only keeps it from falling back down. Okay, kind of attaches it together, attaches it to the inside of the xylem, but osmosis is what actually lifts it. Okay, so it's an osmotic lifting action or pulling action from above. Okay, and the reason I keep going over that is because tomorrow we will be starting our lab on how plants transport water. Okay, it's a pretty simple lab. Okay, we're going to have some more plants because these ones won't be enough. Okay, I'll go pick up some more tonight. And what we're going to do is simply make some dyed water, okay, with food coloring, and we are going to simply cut off some pieces of those plants and put them in the water. And then we're going to record how much water we have initially. On Monday, we'll come back, we'll look at our plants, hopefully they have dye in them, okay, and there's less water in the tube. That means that the plants will transport the water. Ideally, that's what will happen. It happens 90% of the time. Okay? It doesn't always happen. Sometimes things go wrong, like I can't get those plants and I get something else that doesn't work. That's what happened 2 semesters ago. Okay? Or we get an extremely cloudy, crappy weekend. Hopefully that won't happen, because that sucks. Because then the plants don't transport water and, you know, all the other stuff about not having a nice weather weekend. Okay? So hopefully that happens, okay? And we get lots of transport most of the time. It works. Okay? All right, so for today, we're going to look at plant growth and development. So we're going to look at what are the things that tell a plant when to grow, what to grow, all of that kind of stuff. Because they're similar but different to how animals grow. I mean, we're very familiar with how animals grow because we know how we grow. Okay? But animals and plants have different natures. Okay? As an animal, if conditions are poor where you are, what do? You move. You go somewhere else. Okay, we have that option. Plants don't. Okay, plants are stuck wherever it is they are. Okay, this isn't like the Lord of the Rings. They can't just up and walk around and do stuff. Okay, it doesn't work that way. So they have to adapt to the conditions in which they live. Okay. So we got to understand what factors influence the growth of plants. Okay, that's pretty straightforward. Okay, what hormones are involved or responsible for growth and development in plants? Plants actually make hormones too, just like we do. Understand the plant shape is not fixed, but is the result of the interaction of environmental factors and growth responses. Okay, back before I was required to destroy and get rid of all of my plants, okay, I had many of them in here. But they actually all came from 1 or 2 plants. Because I had about 2 or 3 different types of plants in here, okay? But they all actually came from one original plant for each species. What would happen is just the pot would get full because they would grow so much, and I would have to cut them off. But rather than let them die, I would just stick them in the dirt somewhere else, and they would keep growing. But what I was doing was essentially cloning the plant. I was making a genetically identical plant in another place. Okay? Because all I'd done is taken a piece of the plant and replanted it. And I could do that over and over and over again. I keep getting different plants. And then what I would do is I put them in different parts of the room. Because, you know, I'm a science guy. It's my job to torment plants by moving them around. Okay? And so I'd have some over here in this corner where there's not a whole lot of light. And I would have others over here in the window. Do you suppose they look the same? Nope. But they're genetically identical. Okay? If I had a genetically identical person to me, they would be my twin. Would they look like me? Yes. Okay? What if we grew up on different sides of the world? Would they still look like me? Yes. Okay. Now there's the whole nature-nurture argument. Would they be exactly like me? No. Okay, there's that whole thing going on where they've actually done these like long-term studies on twins who were separated at birth. Okay, and they've actually, it's really interesting. If you ever have time to read some of that, it's really, really interesting. Okay, there are certain traits that seem to be genetically predispositioned, and there are other things that are learned. Okay, and so, yeah, like one, for example, was these two twins had never met each other. They'd grown up in completely different environments. And when they were grown-ups, they bought exactly the same car. Like, same model, same year, same color. Okay? So, you know, your tastes might be something that's genetically predispositioned. Okay? How many people have had cilantro before? This is one of the ones that's, like, genetically predispositioned. For how many of you does it taste like soap? It's a genetic thing. Okay, like I love cilantro. I love everything that has cilantro in it. It tastes awesome to me. My wife can't stand anything with cilantro in it because she said it tastes like soap. I'm like, what? It tastes like soap? No, it tastes like soap. She can't eat anything that has cilantro. It can't. It's genetic. Okay, so there's some things that are genetic, some things that are a product of your environment. Plants are very much a product of their environment because they don't have any choice. They have to grow there. They have to live there. Okay, sort of making sense? Okay, so since plants are rooted to one location for life, a plant generally responds to environmental cues by adjusting its pattern of growth and development. Okay, because the program for development of the plant remains somewhat plastic, that is, it's not set in stone, okay, plants of the same species vary in body form much more than do animals of the same species. So one of the experiments that I did with my plants was the one I had over on the filing cabinet, I never ever turned it. I just left it the way it was. So the same side of it always faced the window. The ones that grew in the window, every time I watered them, I would turn them about 45 degrees. Every time I watered them, I'd just turn them a little bit. What do you suppose happened to the plants? What does a plant always grow towards? Right. Okay. So the plant over there on the filing cabinet had one long branch, okay, that like ran down the side of the filing cabinet. I never turned it. So it always grew leaves on that side. It always grew towards the window. But the ones I had in the window, because I turned them 45 degrees every time I watered them, they had to keep growing new leaves because it kept turning the leaves. They would grow away from the sun. I mean, okay? I just kept doing that. So they had to keep growing new leaves. They were like perfectly even all the way around because I just kept turning them. They would have to keep growing new leaves that were on the sunny side. Okay? And so they would get very, very full, but also very, very even. Whereas that plant over there had one long stringy thing with a bunch of leaves on it because I never turned it. Okay? Plants have to adapt to their conditions. All right, so on this hillside, it's kind of hard to see here, but most of the trees have straight trunks, except for this one. Why is that one crooked?
Because there was no shades.
Well, I don't know if it was. I mean, here's where its roots are, down here. So I don't know if there was a whole lot to shade it, but that, I mean, if a plant will grow out of the shade like that for sure.
Would have gotten blown over by the wind and then tried to grow up straight.
Yeah, either blown over by the wind or knocked over by a rock slide or an avalanche or something like that. Something knocked it over. Okay, and plants know up and down. Okay? Like not consciously, but they can detect which way is up and which way is down, and the sun is generally which way? Up. So they'll naturally try to rebalance themselves and grow towards the sun. It's two different kinds of growth. Okay, one is called phototropism, that's growth towards the sun. Okay, and one is called geotropism, and that's growth against gravity. If that plant, if this tree had kept growing like this, what would have happened to it? exactly. It would have fallen over. All of its weight would have been way out here, and its roots wouldn't have been able to keep it anchored to the ground. But as it grows like this and starts getting its weight back over its roots, it can balance. Okay? I mean, it's probably getting the same amount of sun no matter what it does. If it keeps growing straight out this way, it's still going to be in the sun. There's nothing there to shade it. But it is going to get imbalanced, and it's going to tip over and die. So it'll grow this way to rebalance itself. Trees do this all the time. Okay? You'll get some trees that have really weird shapes. Take a hike sometime. Okay? Not all the trees are straight.
I have like this tree in my backyard, and like it goes like this, and then it makes a C, and then just goes straight. But it's like on flat ground.
Yep. Okay. When I worked at a golf course through university, we had a tree look just like that on the golf course. Okay. So there was this tree, and it did this. Like I kid you not, it looked just like what you described, and it was a pine tree or a spruce tree. Okay. I kid you not, it looked like that. It looked like a cartoon. Okay. Next to that tree was a big rose bush. Okay, like a wild rose bush. Literally growing like this, right kind of at the base of that tree. Okay. Likely what happened was the rose bush or some other plant that was there earlier was shading this when it was a sapling, when it was really, really small. So it grew out to get into the light. Once it got into the light, it couldn't keep growing this way or it would fall over. So it grew back over its roots and then started growing straight up again. And it's got a big bow. You actually see it quite often. It's usually the result of them being shaded when they're little. And they grow out of that, okay, and then back over. And now it's shading out the tree that shaded it before. It's getting its revenge, okay, by shading that out. But rose bushes do okay in the shade too. So. But yeah, you see that. It's not common, but it's also not uncommon, okay, to see a plant have a really weirdly shaped trunk, especially a spruce tree. They're really good at it. Poplar trees, you don't see them do that much. But. All right. So, control of plant growth and development is controlled by hormones. Plants make hormones in the same way that animals make hormones. I shouldn't say in the same way. Chemically, it's the same. But every cell in a plant can make every hormone. Plants don't have glands. Okay? Animals have glands. We have certain locations in our body that make certain hormones. Right? My adrenal gland can make adrenaline, but they don't make insulin. Okay? So we have different spots in the body because we're organisms that are multicellular and specialized. See how I made that segue? Okay. So with a plant, they don't have glands, so every cell in the plant needs to be able to make all the hormones. Okay? So a houseplant on a windowsill is going to grow towards the light. That was the example I was talking about a minute ago. That's what this plant is doing. Okay? Notice all its leaves face to the left. The only reason it would do that is if that's where its light source is. Okay? If you rotate the plant, it will reorient its growth until the leaves once again face the window. And the growth of a shoot towards light is called positive phototropism. Most phototropism is positive. Very rarely does a plant grow away from its food source. That's the sun, or whatever light is feeding it. When would a plant grow away from the light? It does happen. It's incredibly rare, but it does happen. When would it do that? Possibly to get out of the shade of other plants, it could possibly do that. But they'll also do it if the light is so intense that it's actually hard on them. Okay? If you're to put a plant that normally is a shade-tolerant plant, but you put it on a south-facing slope where it just gets beaten by the sun every single day, it'll try and grow so that it can shade itself a little bit. Okay? It'll actually turn its leaves and things like that so that it's not being cooked, essentially, by the sun. It's pretty rare, but it does happen. All right, so in a forest or other natural ecosystem where plants are crowded and thus having to compete with each other, phototropism directs growing seedlings toward the sunlight, which is generally upwards. What if they're growing in a place where they can't see the sun at all? They're growing on the forest floor. How do they know which way to grow? They know up and down, gravity. Okay? They use geotropism. Okay? All right, so all of this growth is controlled by plant hormones, and the plant hormones work just like our hormones do. They trigger different types of cellular change. Maybe they make the cells get longer. Maybe they make the cells divide. Maybe they do this or that. Okay, but all of the hormones cause different changes in the plant, different changes in the cell, and that results in the growth and change in shape sometimes of a plant. Okay, tropisms are any change in shape of the plant, okay, due to a growth pattern or growth stimulus. Okay, gravity, light, even touch. Okay, some plants you can train them. Okay, they grow a certain way or they crawl. Right? Have you ever seen like ivy growing up the side of a building? Or honeysuckle is another one that's quite common around here. People will make like a trellis and the honeysuckle will just grow up the trellis. Sweet peas, garden peas, okay? You usually have to build a little pea fence for them in your garden so they can climb up it. Okay? Some things grow like that as well. And that's another growth or tropism called thigmotropism, which is a growth response to touch. Okay. Anyone ever see that bamboo? You can buy it at the store and it goes and it's like a coil. Okay. Anyone know how they do that? Because the bamboo doesn't grow that way. Bamboo grows up.
Is it because they'll put obstacles in front of it so that it obstructs its natural growth up?
Kind of. They actually tie it to a pipe. So they'll put a pipe right beside the bamboo shoot, and then they'll tie the bamboo shoot to the pipe. And the bamboo shoot will grow away from that string. And as it starts to grow away, it tries to go up, they tie it on, and they get it to actually grow around the pipe by just training it. Bamboo grows really fast, so it's not like a long-term process. Okay? They can actually get it to grow around the pipe relatively quickly. Okay? That's why there's this like urban legend that one of the ways that they would execute people was to put them on top of growing bamboo. And the bamboo grows so fast that it would grow through the people. You can rock yourself to sleep tonight. Okay. So 5 major classes of plant hormones that we're going to go over. Okay. The way I would test this on a test is I would show you a picture of a plant and give you a situation like, okay, here's what this plant has been doing. Okay. Explain what hormone is involved and how it works. Something like that. Okay. So kind of a real world application. Where's the light source for these little alfalfa sprouts? To the right. What is up with that one on the left? Every other alfalfa sprout is growing to the right. Why did that one grow up? It was being shaded. Yeah. The quickest route for this sprout to get into the light was to go up. It couldn't see the light. It was shaded by all these other ones, so it used geotropism. It said, light is up. I'll grow up. Okay, and so up it went. Okay, the other ones could see enough of the light that they knew which way to grow. These ones here at the back, they started off straight. But once they got tall enough, they could see the light. So the light source is probably doing this. Okay, something like that, or maybe not quite that angle. Okay, but as you know, light could get through kind of the thinner part here, and these ones could detect where it was, and then they started growing towards it. This one probably still doesn't know where it is. Okay, so it's growing up, because light is generally up, at least in a natural ecosystem. Okay? So we're going to go over the 5 different groups of hormones. Okay, so the first group of hormones are called auxins. Auxins trigger the lengthening of cells. So if a plant is secreting auxins, its cells are going to grow longer. Not going to make more of them. The cells it already has will get longer, okay? Which will result in the plant getting longer. Okay? So this is how a plant generally increases its height or length. Okay? So it's auxin is actually used to describe any chemical substance that promotes the elongation or lengthening of a plant. Single most important function of auxin is to stimulate elongation of cells in young developing shoots, so the part of the plant that would grow the most. Okay? Auxin can also be used to make plants develop fruit without being pollinated. How many people have ever had seedless fruit? seedless watermelon, seedless oranges, okay? The way they do that is they trick the plant into thinking that it's been pollinated, okay? Normally, to make fruit, pollen has to come from another plant and land on the flower of another plant. Okay? It's either carried there by wind or by insects or by bats or whatever. Something has to bring the pollen to the other plant. Okay? Inside each pollen grain are plant sperm. When the pollen lands on the stigma, okay, the plant sperm causes a bit of a reaction with it, and there's a tube, a pollination tube that is made that goes down to the ovary. The bottom of the flower is where the ovary is. Okay? And so then the sperm that were in the pollen can go to the egg and fertilize the egg, and then fruit will develop around the seed that was produced by the egg and the sperm. Okay? So the seed is where we get that fruit surrounds the seed. You can trick a plant into thinking it's been pollinated by putting a dilute amount of auxin on the flower. Okay? It's the same kind of chemical signal that pollen would give. Okay? It's also the same chemical signal that causes you to be allergic to some things. Okay? If anyone's allergic to certain types of pollen, that's why. Okay? It'll trigger that same reaction and the plant will grow fruit, except because there was no sperm and no egg meeting, the fruit doesn't have any seeds in it. All right, so auxins have a lot of uses. Obviously, plants use them to grow. We've used them for other things. Okay? These two pictures are of the same place, several weeks apart. What do you suppose happened there?
Which one was first?
The green one's first. Yeah. This is all jungle. Okay? Jungle all dead. Only a couple weeks apart. And it was taken in about 1970, 1969, 1970 in Vietnam.
Was it napalm?
Nope, napalm would burn everything. Napalm is essentially like bombing something with gas. Okay, and then the gas ignites and burns really, really hot. So it would be charred. But it is something else that was kind of like that. Nope, not a heat wave. So, in the Vietnam War, the Vietnamese communist soldiers would hide in the jungle, because in the jungle there's lots of places to hide. They would, jump out and ambush the American soldiers. Of course, the American soldiers didn't like being ambushed very much, so the army said, we need a way to eliminate the cover of the jungle. And the first answer was, burn it down. Well, it's hard to burn down a jungle. I mean, it's a rainforest. It's really wet. You don't get a lot of forest fires in the rainforest. It's not like up here. Okay? So they tried the napalm thing. They tried, carpet bombing. But the problem with that is that it kills all the civilians in the area too, and that's generally frowned upon. Okay? So, short of a tactical nuclear strike, which has the same problem, they said, we need to just kill all the plants. So they go to the CIA and they're like, you guys are supposed to be really smart. Figure it out. Well, then take the CIA along. They got a lot of people that are really smart, but get crazy ideas. And they said, all right, we're going to poison all the plants. And they're like, nah, you got to be careful. People live there. If you poison the plants, you can poison the people. You need to get something that's just going to kill the plants. Okay. Again, the CIA's got a lot of smart people. So they come back a few weeks later, they got, all right, we got it. We're going to spray them with this stuff. It's a synthetic plant hormone. And it'll kill all the plants. It'll just make them grow like crazy until they die. The Army's like, does it hurt people? We don't think so. Good enough. Okay. So they got, these big tanks. They attached them to their helicopters, and they sent the helicopters out spraying the forest. Okay? And of course, because it's the CIA and they got people with kind of sometimes a little bit warped ideas, they painted Smokey the Bear on the side of all the spray helicopters, and it said, only you can prevent forest, instead of only you can prevent forest fires. Only you can prevent forest, because they were going to kill all of the forest. Okay, so they spray this stuff, and sure enough, the jungle grows like crazy for about a week and dies. Because it was growing so fast, it couldn't sustain its own growth. And it couldn't get enough nutrients, couldn't provide all that stuff, and it literally grew itself to death, keeled over and died. Okay? And the CIA looked at that and said, we're going to call this stuff Agent Orange. Because we need a cool name for it. And that's cool. So they called it Agent Orange, and it was their defoliant. Okay? They would spray it on foliage, and it would get defoliant. Okay? Worked great. Problem is, it did have some side effects on the people, which of course they didn't know about at the time because they didn't test that, and it was more long term. Their own soldiers would report kind of not feeling well. And they reported that it smelled really bad, and a lot of them later developed like cancerous tumors in their lungs and things like that as a result of inhaling the fumes. Has anyone ever smelled what it smells like when they spray the dandelions in town? Okay, same stuff. Okay? It's 2,4-D. It's the same ingredient that is in Killex. It kills all broadleaf plants. Doesn't kill grass, okay? But kills broadleaf plants like big jungle trees and dandelions. Okay? So yeah, it's not really good for you. Okay? And they did unfortunately have a lot of people who ended up being very sick afterwards because it caused cancer, which is rapid cell growth. Okay? Yeah. In people, that's what it caused. In plants, it didn't cause cancer. It just caused the plant to grow like crazy until it died. Okay? But plant hormones work differently. Okay? So yeah, that's what they used it for. And then they discovered it had lots of other uses. It kills weeds without killing grass. So, all right, that's good. And it can trick plants into thinking they've been pollinated and make seedless fruit. So that's cool, because then you don't have to spit the seeds from your watermelon or bite down on a seed in an orange, because everybody hates that. Okay? So they do have those uses. Okay? But what an auxin does is it makes a cell grow its cells longer. And that's really important for a plant that wants to change its shape to grow around something. Okay? So auxins are responsible for all of the tropisms that we're going to talk about: phototropism, geotropism, and thigmotropism. Okay, so yeah, if you get too much of something, basically all they did was spray this stuff on the plants, and they basically overdosed them with their own growth hormone. Okay, which that's the same as what happens to a person if they take steroids. Okay, like if you get too much of something that's supposed to be there and do a certain job when it's present in certain amounts, it'll just do it too much. Okay, what happens to somebody if they take too much growth hormone? What happens to the roid monkeys? That's really not nice, but that's what I'm talking about. The people who take steroids, the cheaters. Okay. Yeah, that's what they're looking for, right? It's growth hormone. It makes you grow. Now, it doesn't necessarily make you grow taller, okay? But it does allow you to repair tissue more quickly. Okay? You can't just take steroids and sit in front of the TV and get huge. Okay? It doesn't work that way. Okay? But if you take steroids and you work out, you can work out more because your body heals faster. Okay? Because steroids, like anabolic steroids, like testosterone, human growth hormone, things like that, okay? They allow your body to heal faster, so you get gains more quickly. Of course, why it's banned by sporting institutions like the Olympics and stuff like that, because it's cheating. Okay? You can work out twice as much as a normal person. So you get really, really big. But there's side effects. Okay? All kinds of really bad side effects. It also depends on what hormones you're taking. Okay? Back in the 80s, there was this huge amount of cheating going on with all Olympic sports. The Americans and the Soviets and everybody. Okay? Canadians too. Ben Johnson was Canadian. He cheated like crazy. Okay? They were taking all these anabolic steroids, but what they were taking was testosterone. Okay, which is a male sex hormone, but it makes males have all the kind of secondary male sex characteristics: larger muscles, hair, okay, things like that. So the men who took it would get bigger muscles, increased hair growth. Oftentimes they would get more aggressive. Okay, you ever heard of roid rage? Okay, ever seen somebody with roid rage? Like you go to the gym and you pick up the guy's dumbbell before he's done with it. He's like, don't eat me. Okay? So yeah, you got those kind of things going on. You got all the things that are triggered by this hormone, but you've got so much more of it in your body that it's doing those jobs twice as much or 3 times as much. Okay? So it would have that effect on males. The other effect it would have was certainly not desirable. If the part of you that makes that hormone is constantly being told there's way too much of it in the body, it just stops producing it and shrinks. Okay? Yeah. Okay. Think about what part of the male anatomy makes testosterone. Okay? And yeah, so that would be the downside. Okay? It's also really hard for your liver to clean up all the toxic waste products of breaking down, because when hormones break down in your body, they actually produce waste products that are not good for you. If you're taking way more of it, it actually can cause your liver to fail. They weren't the only ones taking it. There were lots of women who were taking the testosterone as well during the 80s. Okay? Like the East German women's swimming team. Okay? They developed very male-like characteristics as a result of taking lots of testosterone. Okay? They didn't look very female anymore as a result of taking all of these. This is actually now a therapy that is used if someone is transitioning. They can give them the hormones of the sex that they're transitioning to, and they can actually develop the characteristics of the sex that they're transitioning to. Okay? But at that time, that was not what they were being used for. They were being used to cheat and develop giant manly-like muscles, okay? That made them very, very fast. So there was all these kinds of things that go on. Same thing happens for plants. That's what happened with Agent Orange. They just put them on steroids and they grew themselves to death. Okay? And that's what can go on. All right. Cytokinins. Cytokinins cause cytokinesis, which is cell division. Okay? Plants use this to replace cells that are aging and maybe no longer working well. So they'll cause other healthy cells to divide to replace them. This essentially means that some plants can live a very, very long time. Okay? There are some plants in the world that are thousands of years old. Okay? The Methuselah tree, which grows in Northern California somewhere, okay, is over 5,000 years old. Okay? Some of the giant sequoias that grow on the west coast of Canada, in BC there, some of those can be 1,000 or 2,000 years old. Okay? So having these hormones that constantly replace old cells makes you live a really long time. Okay, Gibbsillins. Gibbsillins do a little bit of everything. They're kind of a general purpose growth hormone. Okay, so roots and young leaves are the major sites of gibberellin production. They stimulate growth in both the leaves and the stem, but have almost no effect on root growth. It's almost entirely auxins that affect root growth. Okay, so in stems, gibberellins stimulate cell elongation and cell division. So they actually cause like the production of other hormones like auxins and cytokinins. Kind of like in your body, thyroid stimulating hormone produces or causes the production of thyroxine. One hormone produces another. Okay? If you get, as a plant, too much gibberellins, some things can happen. Okay? In this picture here on the left, these are normal rice plants on the left. These rice plants on the right have what's referred to as foolish seedling disease. Okay? Foolish seedling disease is caused by a fungus that grows on the roots and causes an overproduction of gibberellins. And what that means is the stems grow higher without growing thicker. And then they fall over and die, foolish seedlings. Okay? They fall over and die, foolish seedling disease. Okay? So if you get that kind of stuff, that's what can happen. Okay? Gibberellins can also stimulate the production of fruit. Okay? Or more specifically, how many blossoms a plant might produce. Okay? So if you have lots of blossoms, you're typically going to get fewer, or you're going to get more small fruit. Okay? If you have larger blossoms, but less of them, you're going to get larger but less numerous fruit. Okay, so if you've ever had, one of those strawberries that's like the size of an apple, okay, it probably had some of this. Okay, fewer blossoms, bigger fruit. Okay. All right. And then abscisic acid. This one's really important for plants that live in Canada and the United States, places where there's definite seasonality, where we have a summer and a winter. Okay? Abscisic acid slows down the growth of a plant and makes it assume a dormant state. Okay? It does that by disrupting the production of chlorophyll. You'll want to add that because it's not in your notes. Okay? It disrupts chlorophyll production. Okay? This is why the leaves turn colors in the fall. Okay? Plants start to produce abscisic acid as days get shorter. Okay? As days getting shorter is a very reliable signal that winter is coming. Okay? So they start producing abscisic acid, which disrupts the production of chlorophyll. If there's no chlorophyll, there's no photosynthesis. If there's no photosynthesis, there's no movement of water up the xylem. Okay? And that helps a plant prepare for winter. A plant does not want its xylem full of water when it freezes. Why not? Yeah, and what happens to water when it freezes? It gets bigger. Okay? I mean, if you've ever froze a water bottle, okay, in your freezer, right, the bottom pops out. Okay? Bottom pops out because ice takes up more space than liquid water does. Well, now imagine it's water trapped inside a tree. When it freezes, it'll shatter the tree. Okay? It'll expand and it'll literally break. All those little xylem tubes will break, okay? And that'll kill the tree. They don't want to have a hard freeze when there's water inside. Yeah, well, you're not going to the same bathroom, so go ahead.
What?
You're not going to the same bathroom,
Oh.
so go ahead. Okay. All right, so everybody kind of follow here? What you're seeing in this picture is they were actually doing a study on the effect of abscisic acid. Okay, the plants in the back that have the flowers on them, natural amount of abscisic acid. They're growing like crazy. Okay, and there was progressively higher amounts of abscisic acid as they came forward. So you can see the plants in front of those are green but don't have any flowers, lighter green, kind of sickly greenish yellow, and then basically not growing much at all here in the front where the level of abscisic acid was the highest. It signaled dormancy much earlier than it should have been for those plants. Okay, so they stopped producing chlorophyll, stopped growing. Okay, ethylene. Ethylene is a gas. It's not necessarily a hormone per se, but it has hormone-like effects. It is a gas produced by the ripening of fruit. Okay? You've probably noticed that if you put bananas near anything, they spoil really fast. Okay, and I don't mean the bananas, I mean the anything you put them beside. Okay? Bananas release lots and lots of ethylene. They release it very quickly, okay? Which is why if you buy bananas when they're yellow, they'll be brown before you eat them. If you buy them green, you'll eat them before they're yellow. It happens every time. It's called the banana principle. True story. Okay, so ethylene is produced by all ripening fruit. Okay, so lots of times it's just produced when it's on the vine, especially by the sepals. Those are the little tiny leaves that are right at the top of a fruit. Okay, so here in Canada, we take advantage of this quite a bit in the fall. Because we typically get frosts very early, we can't typically leave tomatoes on the vine outside in September without the risk of them being frozen and dying. So we harvest them when they're green, okay, before they're ripe, and we just bring them inside. Some people put them on their windowsill, okay? People who want them to ripen fast, put them in a box with a couple of apples. Because the apples release lots of ethylene, and it'll make the tomatoes ripen faster. Okay? So if you're looking to make like a big batch of tomato sauce or salsa or whatever, okay, and you need all the tomatoes to be ripe at the same time, you just throw them in a box, put the lid on, and the ethylene can't escape, and all the tomatoes ripen quickly. Okay? Back a few years ago, they had this stuff they were advertising on TV, these green bags that you could put produce in, and they would keep them fresh for like weeks. They wouldn't spoil. And the advertisement was that the inside of these green bags absorbed ethylene gas, okay? And it prevented the fruit or vegetables or whatever was in there from spoiling because it didn't allow them to fully ripen. So the science behind it was great. I don't know what happened to these bags, because now you don't see them anywhere. They probably had a carcinogen in them or something that caused them to make the food bad. But okay, they worked. The science behind them was really sound. It was absorbing the thing that makes fruit rot, essentially. Okay. All right. Okay, tropisms. So tropisms are any growth of the stem that causes a change in direction or a change in shape of the plant. Okay, we're going to look at the three types of tropisms: phototropism, geotropism, and thigmotropism. Okay, so tropisms are growth responses that result in curvatures of the whole plant organs toward or away from stimuli. The mechanism for a tropism, and this is the most important part of this slide, okay, the mechanism for a tropism is differential rate of growth on opposite sides of the organ, so stem or branch or whatever. Okay, so what that means is that if this plant wants to do what it did here, which is change the direction it was growing to be back up again, it needed to make this side of the plant grow faster than the other side. So the outside grew faster than the inside, basically. Okay? By doing that, it pushes and bends the plant back upwards. Everyone all right with that idea? Okay, so how does a plant make one side grow faster? What would it send to the other, to one side of the plant that it wouldn't send to the other? Those are the hormones that make plants' cells longer. Okay? So if a plant needs to bend or grow in one direction, it sends more auxins to the side that needs to grow faster than it does to the other. And what happens is the cells on that side get longer than the cells on the other side. So imagine you got two sides of the plant, okay, and they're growing at the same rate. All right, so they're made of the same number of cells. Okay, like that. And then suddenly you send auxins to this side here. Okay? All of these cells now get longer. But remember, they're still kind of attached to each other. So the cells on this side get longer, okay? And what ends up happening is the cells on that side got longer, and it'll create a torque that will bend the plant this direction. Okay, because this side is growing slowly, and the other side is growing quickly. Okay, that sort of makes sense? Okay, so that's how all of the tropisms we're going to look at happen. One side grows faster than the other because the other side gets more auxins, and so the cells get longer faster. Okay, so geotropism we talked about. Geotropism is a growth response to gravity. The plant knows which way is up and grows up. Okay? It's usually the result of being knocked over or becoming imbalanced for some reason. Could be like the plant you were telling me about that I drew. Okay? Like once it started growing out into the sun, it got imbalanced. So I'm in the sun, now I'll grow straight back up again and rebalance myself. Okay, so it can be either one. Most of the time you see it as a result of the plant being knocked over when it was young. Okay, and it just kind of rebalances itself. Okay. right? And that's what we're seeing with that plant in the pot there. It's not growing that way for light. There's nothing to shade it. It could keep growing straight out and get just as much light as it would have if it did what it shows here, okay? But they naturally try to balance themselves by growing vertically. And then phototropism, growth towards light, okay? And so this is kind of what I was trying to diagram. On this side of the plant, okay, here, this is the slow growing side of the plant, so the cells are all short, okay? On the outside of the plant, we're getting more auxins, so those cells grow longer, and that torques the plant and pulls it this way, okay? It's the same as, like, if you wanted to, like, cause something to turn, okay? So, kind of like this. It's my ghetto physics demonstration, okay? If this thing's gonna go straight, I don't need to do anything. It'll go straight naturally. But if I want to turn it, I've got to pull on it, right? So if I throw it and the string isn't like taut, it'll go straight. But it'll start to turn as soon as the string gets like this, right? So nobody saw that coming. I totally did. Okay. So yeah, once that force is there, that torque is there, it starts to turn, and that's what's going on here. As long as they're growing at the same rate, it grows straight. But as soon as there's more going on one side than the other, okay, with this tape, this side was going faster than this side, it slowed it down and pulled it across. Okay, it starts to turn. Okay. And then the last one is thigmotropism, and that's a growth response to touch. Not all plants are going to demonstrate thigmotropism. Some plants rely on it. Okay? Ivy would be one. Okay? Ivy relies on being able to support itself, not through its own stem, but by using walls or other plants, okay, to grow up and get to the sun that way. It kind of cheats. Okay? It just kind of crawls up something else to get exposure to the sun. Okay? So for thigmotropism, that same curvature, because if you've ever seen what peas do or anything that crawls up, what they do is they curl. They make a little tendril that just curls around something and kind of just holds onto it. That curling is still caused by the same process. One side has to grow faster than the other. Okay? Making sense? All right. Now, other types of thigmotropism actually involve chemicals. Okay? Ivy is one of those. And actually these plants here, these Dieffenbachia, they do the same thing. Luckily they're not too close to the wall. Okay? They've got on them little spots. Okay? Anywhere where there's kind of a nub, there's these kind of little brown spots. Okay? See them there, these little brown spots like this. Okay? If those come into contact with a wall or solid surface of some kind, they actually secrete an acid. Okay? And that acid will dissolve the material that it's touching, and they'll grow a tendril into the pit that they make. And it'll be used to hold on. That's what ivy does, is it crawls up a brick wall, okay? It actually dissolves little pits into the brick so that it can hold on better. Okay? Kind of like putting a piton in if you were climbing a mountain. Right? You know, just use your bare hands, put in the little nails, okay, that you can hold on to. So that's the other way they can do it. And I only know that those do that because I've actually had them actually attached to a piece of drywall, and then like the drywall comes off when you move the plant, and you don't realize that the plant is like holding onto it really strongly. All right, so thigmotropism stimulated by touch. Also the bamboo, we talked about how they tie it to a pipe and make it grow around the pipe, same thing. Okay, I want you guys to answer those questions, and we should have time to go through them before class is over. All right, let's have a quick look at these ones here. So, why is it that two identical plants that would be grown from clippings of the same plant may grow up to look entirely different?
If they have like, if they have to like adapt to their environment, and they grow up in like different environments.
Yeah, they grow up in different environments. Remember, they have to adapt to their environment by changing what they are. Animals adapt to their environment by changing their environment. Okay? All right, number 2, any growth pattern in plants is referred to as a what? Tropism, yeah. Hey, do plants in the tropical rainforest require very much abscisic acid? What do you think? Do plants in the rainforest go dormant? No. If a plant goes dormant in the rainforest, it's dead. Things will overgrow it. Okay? They don't have winter in the rainforest, so they don't need to go dormant. They grow all year. Okay, number 4, long exposure to 2,4-D, that's Agent Orange, okay, has been shown to produce cancerous tumors in humans. Why might this happen? It is, after all, a plant hormone. What does it cause? Rapid cell growth, rapid cell division, okay, and so that's what it triggers in animals. And what's the hormone involved in the ripening of fruit? Ethylene. So expect that on an exam, okay, you're going to get, there's going to be lots of pictures, okay, on the biology unit exam, simply because it's very much that type of unit. So, have a look at your notes, look at the pictures, look at what I might ask, okay, that kind of thing. All right, so tomorrow we are going to be getting the lab set up to let it run over the weekends. Okay, the observations you'll need to make tomorrow are water volume and take some pictures, some before pictures of your plant.